the challenge facing us is how we can reverse existing trends and accelerate progress towards the breakthrough agenda goal and make sustainable climate resilient agriculture technologies and practices the go-to choice for farmers everywhere. So the objectives for today are first to introduce the agricultural breakthrough as a framework for action in sustainable climate resilient agriculture. And in this, we want to talk about how it fits into the international landscape, including the Aim4C climate and the global action agenda, and also to set out our plans in the run-up to COP27 and beyond. Secondly, by working with you and engaging with you all through a series of breakout groups, we really want to use this opportunity to identify the barriers and opportunities for practical action that will help coordinate and catalyze partnerships that can accelerate progress towards the 2030 goal envisaged by the agricultural breakthrough. So we're really excited and privileged to be organizing this event with the US and UAE as the Aim4C climate ideation, and to have so many Aim4C climate members on the call today. The UK is delighted to be a member of the Aim4C climate, which is the only global initiative that brings together countries, private sector, philanthropies, and knowledge partners to focus on the R&D as well as the delivery part. The agricultural breakthrough announced at COP26 alongside Aim4C climate brings a wider focus on sector-wide transitions during this decade and tracking progress against the 2030 vision, including by placing agriculture on par with other big emitting sectors. We see the agricultural breakthrough as a framework for action that works by identifying collaboration gains between initiatives, and that includes Aim4C climate, global action agenda for innovation in agriculture, as well as others. So the range of initiatives are strongly aligned in their focus on climate smart, productive, and environmentally sustainable agriculture. Indeed, many organizations and countries are already connecting with both the agricultural breakthrough and Aim4C climate. So we very much encourage you all to join and sign up to Aim4C climate while endorsing the agricultural breakthrough, as only by working together can we make the links between critical actions that enable us to deliver on the 2030 vision. We want to ensure that we have a long-term vision and system-wide coordination and alignment of R&D efforts with demand signals to maximize deployment. We want to have the scale of investment in research and innovation, as well as the follow-on financing that can take some of the solutions that come out of this R&D to actually ensure that they are working at scale. We also need stronger coordinated international assistance to developing countries to help facilitate this, and also to have a system to engage consumer groups and supply chains to really drive that much needed action on the ground. So there's going to be an opportunity for countries to show their support for the agricultural breakthrough, and we are very much hoping to expand the range of countries that are supporting this. There are opportunities for early movers by announcing intention to endorse the breakthrough at the UN Convention on Combating Desertification in Abidjan on the 9th of May, and also at Stockholm Plus 50 on the 2nd to 3rd of June. So to conclude, the vision for breakthrough is that collaboration can make the transition to sustainable, climate resilient agricultural practices quicker, cheaper, and easier for everyone, driving faster innovation, greater economies of scale, bigger incentives to invest, and level playing fields where needed. So of course, please join us. We need to join up to speed up and scale up. I very much look forward to the important discussions for the rest of the session today. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Charlotte. And I'll now pass over to Ed Webber from BEIS.
Thanks, Rachel, and it's great to be here at this really important event. Thank you all for making the time for it. Just to give you a very little bit of background about the Breakthrough Agenda and its origins. This was a leader-level statement that was launched at COP26, and in essence, it is a commitment by country signatories to collaborate increasingly closely together and with the private sector over the course of this decade in order to speed and scale transitions in a range of key sectors. At its launch, we had 45 countries on board, roughly equating to 70% of global GDP, and importantly, a really good mix of global north and global south countries. But of course, we are very keen to continue to build on that membership base. And underneath that headline statement, we launched a series of so-called Glasgow breakthroughs, and these are sector-specific 2030 bound goals focus on power, road transport, steel and hydrogen, all aiming at ensuring that clean technologies in those sectors become cheaper, more accessible, more affordable, and ultimately more attractive than their fossil fuel counterparts before the end of this decade. We also announced our I can hear quite a lot of background noise there. I might need to mute someone.
We want your elbows under your shoulders, onto your...
Thank you. As I was saying, so we also announced our intention to launch a sustainable agricultural breakthrough. And I know that obviously Rachel's team are taking this forward this year and are making great progress. So this is obviously a really important part of the shaping.
I think we've lost Ed there. Vita, can you see if we can get Ed back?
Yes.
He may have dropped off the call, Rachel, because he's not in the list of participants at the moment. Maybe he'll just rejoin. Okay. We could either wait or move on.
Let's move over to Juan Lucas, and we'll come back to Ed when he's rejoined.
All right, let's do that. Hello, colleagues. Great to be here in this coming together ideation kind of effort that I believe is, collaboration is the way to solve many of the societal challenges, and it's great to see how these different initiatives that we've been hearing about, the breakthrough from Glasgow, the ClimateShot that we launched together with the FCDO and CCAVs, and now Aim for Climate, can come together in this ideation event where we engage all partners and bring different pieces together. So I would like just to share a few ideas with you from CGIAR. The first one is that it's, of course, we have this critical, complex crisis where agriculture is both the cause, a significant contributor to climate change, but is struggling, and its activities, especially in many of the countries in the global south, are deeply affected by it. So agriculture is caused, but also being hurt by climate change. And the great opportunity agriculture has with more innovation, with more knowledge, to be also part of the solution, and how we optimize and rebalance those elements, minimizing the cost and hopefully becoming more solution oriented. So basically, in all of these efforts need to illustrate the policy interest and spotlight on agriculture in the climate change narrative. And ourselves, one CGIAR, we feel have an important role in terms of informing and shaping some of these activities. So of course, most of what needs to happen in the territories, needs to happen at the country level. So the UNFCCC process needs to connect clearly into that, and CG, with its feet on the ground, working on more than 100 countries where we have ability to operate and move in an agile way, bringing new knowledge in partnership can help with that, becoming a critical knowledge and science partner to inform climate action in food, land, and water systems. So basically, the way we're setting this new coming together of CG centers, CG capacities, is by first bringing climate change at the heart of our mission. So we are basically delivering and advancing transformation food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis. So climate cuts across basically all of what we do. We embed climate solutions and climate questions across our portfolio. We are building a climate adaptation and mitigation impact area as one of the 5 impact areas, making sure we are able to capture, identify, synthesize the new evidence, the new solutions coming out of the portfolio, and also to inform that portfolio to align it better with demand over time. And most importantly, through our work in partnership and our portfolio of game-changing initiatives, where we're basically aligning to contribute to those global targets with feet on the ground. So elements that we will bring in terms of outcomes is, of course, implementing national adaptation plans and national determined contributions to the Paris Agreement, supporting that, working directly with NARS, with partners to equip 500 million small-scale farmers to be more resilient with climate shocks, with solutions that are available through those national innovation systems, working in turning agriculture and forest systems into solutions, into things, and of course, by a strong focus on partnerships where precisely the policy engagement works fits in. So as one CGIAR, we will be contributing to the 3 initiatives, the Breakthrough, ClimateShot, and Aim for Climate, by facilitating intersectoral collaboration among relevant sectors and ministries, by building, strengthening, and capitalizing on partnerships for resource mobilization and impact, and of course, more and more over time as we become better as a go-to for systems transformation solutions across climate change. I want to end saying that we are committing to all this in partnership, including greater connection with demand partners and increased alignment with priority countries. And we are basically modeling our behavior on this regard in something that I invite you to review, which is our 2030 engagement framework for partnerships and advocacy that will allow us to deliver impact in partnerships. So this is it from us, Rachel. Back to you.
Thanks, Juan Lucas. Let's go back very quickly to Ed. Sorry, you got cut off there, Ed. Do just come in.
Thanks, Rachel, and apologies for a poorly timed computer update coming out of the blue there. I was referring to the overview of the breakthrough agenda, including how we plan to take it forward this year. And very helpfully, the leader's statement gave us some pretty good instructions on how we might go about doing that. A process that we are calling the global checkpoint process, which we envisage being hopefully an annual cycle of tracking and reviewing progress being made in each sectoral and clean technology transition, and reviewing where international collaboration can be most effectively focused in order to speed up and scale those transitions. This will include a state of the sectoral transitions report being led by the IEA, IRENA, and the high-level champions. And I'm very pleased to say that will include a chapter on agriculture. It also will include the need for a ministerial review of the recommendations in that report. And then hopefully by the time we hit COP27, a publication of an action plan for each breakthrough sector, responding to those recommendations and providing some clear commitments about how we can implement the findings, hopefully endorsed findings in subsequent years, which in turn can then be covered by the subsequent years tracking process thereafter. And your inputs today, over the course of today, will obviously feed into that report writing process and the ultimate development of this agricultural breakthrough action plan. So, you know, we are very much seeing the breakthrough agenda as not a brand new initiative in itself, but rather as a process and a framework for driving and focusing action over the coming years. And because I think we all know that whilst, and as we heard, national and individual organizational efforts will be critical for driving the transition, the sheer speed and scale of that transition that we need to achieve over the foreseeable future means that international collaborative efforts are going to be essential for driving fast innovation, for creating economies of scale, for giving those bigger incentives to investment, and for creating level playing fields where they're really needed. But that's it for me, Rachel. Well, good luck today, and I look forward to hearing the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ed. That's great. Brilliant. Let's move on now to the next slide. And I'm going to just run through a little bit of background for those who are new to it on the breakthrough before passing off to Jamie Adams on AIM for Climate. So just in quick, you've heard a little bit about the objectives for today: building support, linking ClimateShot and AIM for Climate, inspiring collective action and partnerships, and identifying common priorities. And we will take the inputs from today, as Ed says, straight back into the state of the sector report process. So if we move on to the next slide, just a reminder of the breakthrough goal itself. So as you can see there, climate resilient, sustainable agriculture is the most attractive and widely adopted option for farmers everywhere by 2030. It becomes the go-to option in terms of sustainable production. And so for us, this year is really about putting agriculture on a par with the other sectors, complete with country signatories, supported initiatives, and developing agriculture as part of the global checkpoint mechanism. And we're delighted that we're already working with the high-level champions on this, drawing on technical expertise and aiming for a draft report to be shared in the next few months. And so there's a lot of work going on already on that, on developing the metrics at sector level and on the enabling conditions, and more on that later. So we're working towards a consensus really on the global trajectory to 2030 for agriculture, looking at how the international architecture can be strengthened, what are the priority actions, and what is that annual tracking process. And I think that's what distinguishes the breakthrough, is that accountability mechanism that we're all working towards. I'm going to, if we move on to the next slide, so there's some more detail in here which I won't go over now, but you can refer to later on, which gives a little bit more the detailed time frame through this year as we go through those critical actions. But let's move on to the next slide. And what does it mean to endorse the breakthrough? So today we're inviting countries present to endorse the breakthrough, to become signatories. What does this mean in practice, and what does this add? I think the breakthrough, like the Global Action Agenda, recognises that the set of challenges facing the international landscape in agriculture, multiple overlapping initiatives, design challenges. Some of the initiatives maybe don't have the right ambition or membership, often a lack of government engagement and accountability, or lack of structure and coordination of efforts. And we've seen in the past that post summits there can be a fall off in initiatives. So really thinking about sustainability of these initiatives and how we can include the really important debates around adaptation, finance, loss and damage. So the agriculture breakthrough recognises the importance of the various different initiatives out there to drive action, but also brings that focus on kind of clarity and accountability, and reaching consensus on how we deliver that collective action through to 2030 through closer collaboration, better coordination, and setting priorities for our international efforts. if we move on to the next slide. So many of you are signed up to one or other of the initiatives that we've talked about. We see these as very closely aligned and in fact complementary. And today is really an opportunity to recognize that very close alignment between these two high ambition initiatives, Aim for Climate and the Breakthrough, and join us in becoming signatories of both, recognizing that. As we've said, the Breakthrough provides a vision for 2030 and a focus on goals and metrics, and is part of that wider shift to tackling climate change challenges through a country and sector lens, recognizing the benefits of bringing together targets across different policy areas and taking quite a holistic lens on the sector as a whole. And Aim for Climate, as we'll hear, is an initiative which is really driving increased investment in this area, and bringing a real focus on priority technologies and innovations and the urgency of that challenge. The final slide I think that I'll cover now is looking at the is sharing or previewing a little bit of our thinking underpinning the State of the Sector chapter report. And this is working on some of the enabling conditions to deliver the breakthrough. And there's a lot of detail on that slide, and I won't go through that, but please do have a look at that later, and we welcome comments and inputs on that. But I think as we talk about that that shift to looking at climate change through both the country and the sector lens, brings a focus on those enabling conditions to deliver the goal, and we've started to set those out in partnership with the high-level champions. And this thinking will be developed in the report. And what we're going to do today is to pick out some of those enabling conditions to focus on in the breakout groups, and to really pull out what are the key collaboration gains, what are the priorities in each of those, so that we can feed that back into the reporting process. So we'll come back to that when we introduce the breakout groups. Now I'm very delighted to pass over to Jamie Adams from USDA, who will introduce the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. It is a pleasure to be here today. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone who's joining. I would like to start by just thanking the hosts of the United Kingdom, the CGIAR, and Climate for pulling together this Aim for Climate ideation, and for the opportunity to highlight Aim for Climate in conjunction with the agricultural breakthrough. Apologies in advance if you joined for an event just a couple hours ago, the Westminster Food and Nutrition Forum. I'll be covering some of the same materials, so I apologize in advance for those who may be hearing this for the second time today. The challenges of rising food prices, global hunger, and uncertain markets are really top of mind for everyone. The good news is that increases in efficiency and productivity improvements can tackle multiple challenges at once. It is possible, allowing producers to produce more using fewer inputs and improving environmental outcomes, while providing food, fiber, and renewable fuel for the world. As we face the intersecting challenges of global hunger and the climate crisis, empowering agriculture to be part of the solution is a meaningful way to address these challenges. We need investments in new solutions, and we need investments to improve existing solutions to meet these challenges. For this reason, the United States and the United Arab Emirates came together to create the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, also referred to as Aim for Climate, a growing coalition for climate-smart agricultural innovation. Next slide, please. Officially launched at COP26, Aim for Climate is a pioneering initiative co-led again by the United Arab Emirates and the United States. Aim for Climate is focused on increasing investments and promoting cross-sectoral collaboration to underpin transformative climate action in the agricultural sector around the world. Aim for Climate has had a remarkable start. Since launch, with an early harvest of $4 billion in increased investments announced for climate-smart agriculture and food systems innovation at COP26. And now, most recently, at the first Aim for Climate Ministerial, hosted in Dubai in February, Aim for Climate government partners came together and set the goal of doubling this investment figure to $8 billion by COP27 in Egypt later this year. Aim for Climate's membership has grown tremendously, now with over 180 government and non-government partners. And the Aim for Climate team is enthusiastic about the ag breakthrough and the opportunity to work together to maximize the synergies between the two. We encourage you to visit the website at aimforclimate.org and follow on Twitter for update information. Next slide, please. The goal of Aim for Climate is clear: to encourage our partners to increase and accelerate agriculture and food systems innovation in support of climate action. And when we refer to innovation, again, for Aim for Climate, we are referring to research, development, demonstration, and deployment. Next slide. There are 3 objectives that Aim for Climate has identified in order to achieve its goal. First, to mobilize greater investment, as I've mentioned, in climate smart agriculture and food systems innovation globally. There are many studies that show that there's a huge gap in the amount that is invested in climate smart agriculture. Some estimate this gap to be $5 to $6 billion a year annually when compared to other sectors such as clean energy. Second objective is to enable greater coordination and collaboration for impactful exchange of expertise, knowledge, and priorities of national and international levels to amplify the impact of the participants' investments. And then finally, to increase cooperation on shared research priorities between the countries. Next slide. So what do we mean? Diversity, gender equity, and inclusion are critical to the success of Aim for Climate. The initiative recognizes a wide variety of participants that are necessary to achieve the Aim for Climate goal, recognizing also that each participant adds value, and we intend to draw on all knowledge, experiences, cultures, and we like to embrace inclusive excellence through Aim for Climate. Next slide. There are 3 avenues for participation in Aim for Climate. As we've mentioned, there are over 180 government and non-government partners. So you can join as a government partner, innovation sprint partner through announcing an innovation sprint, and also as a knowledge partner. And we'd encourage you to learn more about these 3 categories by visiting the website and also referring to the terms of reference that's also posted on the website. And one final point I just want to mention to make sure that everyone understands, when we refer to climate smart agriculture in reference to Aim for Climate, we're talking about an approach that helps to guide actions needed to transform and reorient agricultural systems to effectively support development and ensure food security in a changing climate. Through sustainably increasing agricultural productivity and incomes, while also simultaneously delivering climate benefits by adapting and building to resilience to climate change and providing opportunities to reduce or remove greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. So what is an Aim for Climate innovation sprint? An innovation sprint, just quickly, is an increase in investment to achieve a specific measurable outcome or output in agriculture innovation for climate smart agriculture. Innovation sprints are encouraged to be bold, ambitious, and completed in an expedited timeframe. And we have 4 focal areas that we're focusing on for 2022: methane reduction, emerging technologies, smallholder farmers in low and middle income countries, and agroecological research. To learn more about innovation sprints in these 4 focal areas, again, we'd encourage you to visit the website. Next slide. Again, thank you for the opportunity. We're looking forward to identifying ways to partner with Ag Breakthrough and achieving synergies between this initiative and so many more. And we are looking forward to the rest of the event today. Back over to you, Rachel.
Thanks so much, Damien. Great to have that update on Aim for Climate. Great. We're going to move now into the breakout groups. These are quite rapid ones, so we ask you all to be as concise as possible. We've got 30 minutes in the breakouts, and then we'll be asking the facilitators to feed back in a sort of 2 to 3 minute burst on the key points. We've drawn the groups from some of the enabling conditions. So group 1 will be looking at mobilizing investments, and Dan Haglund will be leading that from the ClimateShot Impact Investment Coalition. Group 2 is looking at knowledge, capacity and skills for the breakthrough. Andy Jarvis from 1CGIR will be leading on that. And then Group 3 is looking at national research and innovation systems for the breakthrough. And I think we've got Hayden Montgomery and Marta Alfaro from the Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Emissions. 4 is looking at production capacity, supply chains and infrastructure for the breakthrough. Alexia Semov is going to be facilitating that session. She's representing the 100 Million Farmers multi-stakeholder platform. And finally, demand creation and showcasing successful business models. Susan Chomba, who has been leading on the UN Food Systems Summit Coalition on Nature Positive Innovation, will be leading that one. So I think we'll move now straight into those groups. Vita will do her magic on the system and you will find that you're automatically put into those groups. So thanks everybody, and look forward to hearing the feedback.
We had a short but very fruitful discussion around the investment and finance piece and how we accelerate action in that area towards the agriculture breakthrough. And just a couple of key takeaways, I think, is the sense that there's a lot of innovation happening around financing instruments and mechanisms, and a strong recognition that to really accelerate financing for adaptation and nature, as well as broader climate finance, we need to be sort of joining up more in those areas. And I will be putting a link to a webinar in the chat in a moment, an event in 10 days time on this topic. We also heard about how we conceptualize scaling and sharing our evidence and sort of experience on that, and thinking about replication of models as well as the growth of individual models, and the importance of partnership around sharing best practices and lessons around replicating models, as well as messages around essentially using donor and other public capital together with private capital more catalytically, because public capital is scarce, but it's often needed to bring down risks, which in agriculture, compared to some other sectors like energy, renewable energy,
right.
On that.
Dan, you're muted.
Did that?
Okay, now we can hear you. So
okay, sure, thanks. So I'll be very brief given time, but lots of interesting thoughts coming out in the conversation, and in particular around partnership opportunities on innovative financing mechanisms. Lots of people are doing different things, but we need to be more actively sharing our lessons that come out from that, to avoid us being stuck in a perpetual proof of concept stage. I'll be putting a link in the chat in a moment to an event which is discussing these issues in 10 days time. Also lots of messages around partnering to just better use scarce public capital more catalytically. Recognizing that most investment will have to come from the private sector, but given high risks in agriculture compared to sectors like renewable energy, they're thinking creatively about de-risking with catalytic public sector capital, or in other ways, information sharing, data sharing, and so on, to bring down perceived risks is a key area, I think, for partnership. And I think, yeah, so various things there for us to take forward. And I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you for that. Those insights from the ClimateShot Impact Investment Coalition, and how we can mobilize the investment that is needed. And that certainly came across in the group which I was in, also, which was looking at the national level research and innovation capacities. So I'm just going to step in for a bit while Rachel is having some technical difficulties with her audio. But maybe going on to the next group, which is Andy's group, which is on knowledge, capacities and skills to step up to this goal of the Glasgow breakthrough. And coming from that perspective of the reformed CGIAR that Juan Lucas also mentioned in his opening remarks. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Dinesh. Yeah, so in our group, we touched on a few points. One was the issue of a kind of common knowledge infrastructure. And so what we live in a period where there's initiatives galore and pilots, going crazy. But there's very little kind of infrastructure and standards and ontologies and metrics that are being used. It's to facilitate more systematic learning. And so I think this was a really critical point, is to think about how we can use more common metrics and approaches so that we boost learning and improve our actions off all of these different initiatives and pilots. There's also the legacy. We talked about the legacy issue of knowledge. And so, one of the things is lots of knowledge getting generated, but then a lot of reinvention of the wheel, because people are not aware of that. Again, it's part of this kind of knowledge management agenda, and making sure that the right knowledge is accessible to the right people. And so this idea of kind of the legacy issue, I thought that was very interesting. We talked about then kind of the way to go about these things, and it's a capability, it's a skills issue, a knowledge issue of taking a systems thinking approach to solving some of these things if we're going to have this breakthrough. And so this idea of really bringing sectors together and bringing actors together is absolutely critical. And so creating these co-creation spaces. So see about this kind of knowledge, capability, skills as a co-creation process, and we had a discussion also about the kind of the importance of plugging into these locally led innovation systems in that process as well. So, these bottom-up processes can be incredibly powerful, and we tend to, kind of think a lot. Many people think, top down in a lot of these things, and we need to have also a lot of bottom-up listening as well going on and working with those locally led innovation systems. We talked a little bit about the political economy and how we're great at thinking about technical side of things, but very little about the kind of incentives and the real, the politics essentially that will facilitate the kind of multi-sectoral collaboration that is needed. And a lot of the climate action breakthroughs that have happened over the last few years have been in innovations that get actors talking together that haven't necessarily been working so closely together around the climate challenge. So we've got to be much better on the political economy side of things. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I can already hear the synergies with the next group, because you mentioned the role of intermediation, translation, bringing initiatives together, and these came up prominently in the next group, where we looked at the national level of what needs to happen. And Martha Alfaro, maybe I'll hand over to you to give us a quick update, but Andy's highlighted some of our key topics as well. Over to you, Martha.
Thank you. Thank you also to the colleagues participating in working group 3. Very nice points raised by the previous speakers, because we tackle those as well. So I think for us, the keywords were integration and co-creation. So we need to understand that innovation has to be part of the research system, the national research system. So we are used to talk about basic research and applied research, but innovation is kind of new. Not in all countries has the adequate level of development to generate an impact in the final users. And then we understood as well that we need to consider extension. So go to the final users of the technologies or the solutions, and they need to be representative and cover all the diversity we have globally in our agricultural systems. And then going around that, we thought, okay, we need innovation and we need extension, and probably we need someone to translate to the different stakeholders participating in the process, because we think research needs to be integrated with other stakeholders, policymakers, industry, and then intermediaries that could act as translators, and because we speak mostly the same language, but somehow we don't always understand each other, so we need help probably from them. And other point that is very relevant, we think, is that we need to conceive agriculture as being part of a wider ecosystem. So probably within the food sector, and also consider aspects associated to the supply chains and nutrition. So it's not really what happens within the farm, but we need to have a broader overview in relation to agriculture. Yeah, I think those are the main points. We need to be integrated, co-create, and do not forget that we need to build also capacities in our countries in relation to innovation.
Thank you, Martha. Very succinct and clear, and building on what Andy said, also around systems thinking and that integrated approach that we need. Rachel, maybe coming back to you. Do you want to test if your audio is working?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, so I'll just hand back over to you.
Brilliant. So let's go to, yeah, okay, let's go to Alexia. Group 4, I think, was looking at this issue of supply chain. So again, a nice link with what we've just covered, and infrastructure, production capacity, and so on.
Yeah, it's actually very encouraging that there are many links between the groups, probably. So yeah, many thanks to the group. Great comments throughout. I guess 4 key themes came out from the conversation. And the first one is a link to what we were just talking. We need further integration between the different data sets, between the different research globally, and between the different efforts. Like, there's too many disparate things going on, and there's so much research out there, there's so much data, but everything is a bit all over the place. So can we actually bring it together so that we can make more sense of it and use it on a global level? The second is around a mismatch between global level expectations and the reality on the ground. So to give you some examples, the big ticket funding items that have big ticket sizes and also longer, like short timeframes between the bankabilities of farmers and local projects on the ground, or the expectation of off-takers that farmers adopt sustainable practices, and the ability and the funding and the risk profile of the farmers on the ground. So we need to make sure that there's more communication and better match between those different innovations and tools. The third is the need for further clearer frameworks for what innovation actually means, and also what do they entail in terms of risk and benefits for the different players along the supply chain. Especially for the farmers who are often left out of the conversation. We need to clarify the risk and benefits for the farmers, and make sure that digital is acknowledged as only one piece of the entire toolkit that innovation can comprise. And finally, how can we use innovation to elevate the discussion and about co-benefits as an asset? So fighting climate change and carbon, or nature, and use these co-benefits to help finance the transition. What we found in our research is that currently very little farmers are actually measuring the co-benefits on their farms and of their activities, and that the current tools for measuring those co-benefits are way too expensive and prohibitive in terms of how to use them and the technical knowledge needed. So what innovations can we bring about to make sure that we can use these co-benefits as key assets of the transition across the supply chain? So, yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Alexia. That's brilliant. And then we go finally to our last group. Susan Chomba has facilitated that group, but I think has asked Leanne to feed back. So Leanne, you're the last one. Over.
Yeah, I'll keep it short given time. Yeah, I'm stepping in for Susan because she had to log off. Yeah, in the breakout room, we have an interesting mix of people. We have country representatives, but also some of the organizations and companies that are really working to deliver the nature positive innovations already. And there's 2 things I want to highlight from the discussion, and I think it echoes also some of the previous points that were made. So first is really the importance of understanding that innovation goes beyond just the technical and innovation through research. So also looking at policy innovations, and that includes innovative subsidies, but also breaking down institutional silos and also sectoral and supply chain silos. And that's linked to the second point, is that, yeah, we won't be able to realize many of these innovations without taking a cross-sectoral lens as well. so also linking up different groups within the sector. So that's farmers, research, but also these companies that are already doing or delivering these nature positive innovations. And if we don't do that, there's a risk we miss out on all the work that's already being done. Yeah, and like I mentioned, it echoes the points from Andy and Alexia as well. So I think, yeah, encouraging to see that there's overlap in those things as well. Thanks.
And just before we pass off to Dane to say a few final words, just wanted to share this slide on next steps. So we'll certainly be in touch with all of you, whether you're sitting in countries or you're a supporting initiative, to follow up on the launch and other communications and engagement opportunities, including with the State of the Sector report. For countries that want to endorse the agriculture breakthrough, and we really hope that you will, and be part of that State of the Sector report process, be involved in the technical reviews, the peer review, there's an email address here, please get in touch with us. Equally, if you're not a member of Aim for Climate and you'd like to get involved, again, whether you're a country, whether you're an initiative, a knowledge partner, there's all the information here for how you can get involved. So thanks everybody for those really rich inputs. I'm going to pass over now to Dane McQueen from UAE to close out the meeting and to share some concluding thoughts. Thank you, Dane.
Thank you, Rachel, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you to the UK, CG, and Climate for organizing us today. It's very refreshing that we're having this alignment conversation in April instead of October. And I think this is really the spirit that we're hoping for as we go into COP27, and certainly as we prepare for COP28, which we will be hosting in November 2023. I think there's a couple areas that I've taken away from the conversation today, and that also align pretty well with our thinking of how we might move this conversation forward. I think COP26 was quite important in introducing agriculture in a much more significant way to the climate agenda. And certainly it's we're a long way from rebalancing with energy, but there is a growing sense that this is both a mitigation priority and especially an adaptation priority. And I think particularly with COP27 having this focus on adaptation and being an African COP, and then coming to the UAE where food security is such a high priority, this part of the narrative can be fleshed out a lot. And I think what we can do as a group is start to identify what some of these deliverables are, and where we need to force the political conversation to move to. I think with Aim for Climate, we have a really good anchor on the innovation side. We're looking at both, the kind of the headline that gets everyone's attention, like $8 billion, that has that ripple effect and gets picked up, and the FT and the Guardian, and allows some of these messages to reach the broader population. But then how do you undergird that with actual next steps, implementation that builds credibility within the agriculture community and certainly within climate affected communities? So from our side in that innovation sphere, we'll really be looking at how do you get what we're calling innovation sprints together, these pools of money that have a timeline and an outcome in mind, and rally different stakeholders and financing sources around things like interventions for smaller scale farmers, methane, and then some of the flashier high tech stuff like the vertical farming that we do in the UAE. And I think what we could do as a group is identify what those top line messages are, where we want everyone to focus their attention and their resources. And that includes both in the innovation space, but then also particularly with the breakthrough having a wider scope, looking at these other categories like the supply chains, like infrastructure, like capacity building, and think, what are those, let's say 3 to 5 areas where, we could make a difference in the emissions profile and in the adaptation status if there were this mix of policy and new finance that comes together. I think the fragility space will also be really important, particularly for COP27 and COP28. What does that package of investment look like for countries that are being pushed over the edge by climate change? And it's really usually about food and water investments. So that would be one other political area that would be worth us thinking about. But in general, what we could do, I think, over the next few months, and then certainly by COP27, is have that short list and say, between ClimateShot and Breakthrough and Aim for Climate, these are the things that we really want everyone to talk about at COP27. And given how long these things take to happen, we could probably say, and these are the implementation steps that we want at COP29, and the next set that we want, at COP28, and the next set at COP29, and try to sequence this out over, probably 2 to 3 years. What's that step change look like? So I think it would be great if we, kind of using the breakthrough report that will come out in the fall as our opening salvo, and really put in those priorities there and make it very clear where we want leaders and executives to be talking, what we want them to be talking about at COP27, and where we want them to be investing for COP28. And then also through Aim for Climate, and as some of our other participants said today, to try to gather up all those different innovation strands and come up with those sprints. And some of them can just simply be existing sprints that get pulled into this umbrella, but at least puts them all in one place so that people understand where they can plug in if they want to make the change that's necessary for 2030 and 2050. So just, sorry, a bit stream of consciousness, but we're really keen as the UAE, as the COP28 host, as an Aim for Climate member, to start this prioritization conversation and work on a product through Breakthrough in September that lays them out and then allows us to follow up with that more detailed monetary set of actions by the time of COP28. So thank you so much.
Great, thanks so much for that, Dane. Really helpful in bringing together all those different threads and setting out how we can work together on this through the State of the Sector report in September through to the COP27, and then beyond that COP28 and 29. So a huge thank you to everybody for your inputs. We will be in touch. We will continue to engage with this community. We very much hope that if you're not joined up to either of these two initiatives, you will be able to join up to both of them and continue to engage with us as we work towards that common 2030 goal. Thanks very much for your inputs, everyone. Look forward to talking to you again.